It was a cold, rainy evening in the small town of Millbrook. The streets were empty, and the sound of thunder echoed through the sky. 17-year-old Jack Wilson was walking home from his part-time job at the grocery store. He wore a thin jacket, which did little to protect him from the heavy rain. As he passed by the park near his house, he heard a strange sound. It was soft and weak, almost like a cry. He stopped and listened again. There it was, a whimper. Jack looked around and saw a small, dirty dog hiding under a bench. The dog was shivering and looked very weak. Its fur was soaked, and its ribs showed through its thin body. Jack felt sorry for the dog. He slowly walked toward it, talking gently. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The dog backed away at first, but Jack didn't give up. He took off his jacket and carefully wrapped the dog in it. The dog didn't fight. It was too tired. Jack carried it home, even though his mother didn't like animals in the house. But when she saw the poor dog, her heart softened. They dried the dog, gave it some warm milk, and made a small bed for it in the kitchen. Jack named the dog Shadow because it had followed him home like a shadow. From that day, Shadow became part of the family. He was quiet, loyal, and always stayed close to Jack. Jack didn't know it then, but saving that little dog on a rainy night would one day save his life. As the weeks passed, Shadow became healthier and stronger. His fur grew thick and shiny, and his eyes were bright. Jack spent every day with him, feeding, walking, and playing. At first, Shadow was shy and scared of loud noises, but slowly he started trusting people again. Jack trained him using kindness and patience. Shadow learned quickly. He could sit, stay, roll over, and even fetch Jack's shoes. Jack had never had a pet before, but Shadow filled a hole he didn't know he had. Jack's father had passed away when Jack was only 10, and since then, he had felt a deep sadness that never truly left. But Shadow made things a bit easier. The dog was always there when Jack needed him, during lonely nights, or when he felt stressed from school or work. Even Jack's mother grew fond of Shadow. She started adding meat to his food and even bought a warm coat for him during the winter. Shadow followed Jack everywhere, to the store, to the park, even when Jack went to visit his dad's grave. It was like Shadow could feel Jack's emotions and always knew when he needed comfort. 3 years passed. Jack graduated from high school and got a job in a nearby city. Sadly, he couldn't take Shadow with him because the apartment he rented didn't allow pets. Jack cried the day he left. He hugged Shadow tightly and whispered, "I'll come back for you, buddy." "I promise," Shadow whined and tried to follow the car, but Jack's mom held him back. As the car disappeared, Shadow sat by the window, watching, waiting. He didn't know it would be years before he saw Jack again. Jack's life in the city was not easy. The job he got at a warehouse paid little, and the long hours left him tired. He missed home, missed his mother's cooking, and most of all, he missed Shadow. He had photos of the dog on his phone and often looked at them before going to bed. He tried to call home every weekend to ask about Shadow. His mom always said the same thing: "He's doing well, still waiting by the door every evening." City life changed Jack. He became more serious, more cautious. The city was fast, loud, and sometimes dangerous. Jack learned to stay alert. He avoided trouble and worked hard to save money. He dreamed of getting a better job, buying a small house, and bringing Shadow to live with him. One day, a man at work told Jack about a job opening at a security firm. The pay was better, and the hours were shorter. Jack applied and got hired. His job was to patrol buildings at night. It was quiet, sometimes boring, but Jack liked the peace. He always carried a flashlight, a walkie-talkie, and a notebook to report anything strange. Years passed. Jack was now 25. He was doing well, and he finally had enough money to rent a small house with a yard. His first thought was, I can bring Shadow now. He called his mom and told her the good news. She was happy. He still waits for you, Jack. He'll be so happy. Jack smiled. He had no idea that he would soon need Shadow more than ever. Jack took a weekend off and returned to Millbrook. As his car turned onto the familiar streets, memories flooded back. Riding bikes with friends, school days, and most of all, the night he found Shadow. When he pulled into the driveway, Shadow was already at the door, barking with excitement. Jack got out of the car, knelt down, and opened his arms. Shadow ran straight to him, jumping and licking his face. Jack laughed and cried at the same time. I missed you too, boy. His mom watched them from the doorway, smiling warmly. That night, Jack and Shadow sat together on the porch. Jack talked to him like an old friend. I've got a place now, a yard, your own bed, everything. You're coming with me. Shadow wagged his tail like he understood every word. The next day, they packed Shadow's things. His leash, bowl, toys, and blanket. Jack promised his mom to visit often. As they drove away, Shadow sat in the front seat, head out the window, tongue out. He looked happy, like he knew he was finally going home. Jack settled into his new life with Shadow by his side. The dog loved the backyard and the quiet neighborhood. Jack felt complete again. But fate had something unexpected waiting for them, something that would test their bond and change their lives forever. It was a quiet Thursday night, colder than usual. Jack had taken an extra shift guarding an old warehouse on the edge of the city. The building was old and worn with cracked walls and a weak foundation. Jack didn't feel good about being there alone, so he brought Shadow along like always. The warehouse was empty and silent, just the sound of the wind slipping through broken windows. Shadow walked beside him, alert as always. Jack walked around checking every room. Everything seemed fine, but as they walked through the center of the building, there was a sudden, deep rumble. The floor shook beneath their feet. Jack turned around fast. What was that? Before he could react, the ceiling above them gave way. A loud crash filled the air as wood and metal came crashing down. Jack was hit by falling beams and knocked to the ground. Dust and smoke covered everything. Shadow barked wildly, trying to reach him, but heavy debris blocked his way. Jack groaned in pain, barely able to move. He was trapped under a large beam, his leg bleeding and his voice too weak to call for help. It was late. No one knew Jack was there. There were no other guards, no cameras. It was like he had disappeared. But Shadow knew. He barked, cried, and tried to dig through the rubble with his paws. But it was no use. Jack opened his eyes slowly and whispered, "Go, get help, boy." Shadow looked at Jack one last time, let out a loud, heartbreaking bark, and ran out of the building. His paws hit the pavement hard as he ran through the empty streets, guided only by the smell of people and the flashing lights of town. His legs were tired, but he didn't stop. Finally, he reached the nearest police station. The officers inside were surprised to see a barking, panting dog jumping at the door. One officer opened it, and Shadow tugged at his pants and barked louder. "What's wrong, boy?" the officer asked. The dog ran a few steps, then looked back. Something was clearly wrong. Trusting his instincts, the officer and 2 others got in their car and followed Shadow. He led them straight to the warehouse. When they arrived, the sight shocked them. Part of the building had completely collapsed. "Someone might be in there," one officer shouted. They searched the rubble and found Jack, still alive but badly hurt. Shadow barked and wagged his tail as they pulled Jack out. Jack looked at him through teary eyes and whispered, "You saved me." Jack was rushed to the hospital, still dazed and weak. He had a broken leg, a few cracked ribs, and deep bruises, but he was alive. The doctors said if he had been trapped just a little longer, things could have been much worse. The officers told everyone how a dog had come running into the station, barking and begging for help, then led them to the collapsed building. Jack's story and Shadow's spread like wildfire. News reporters came to the hospital. Jack, lying in bed with bandages around his arm and head, smiled weakly when he spoke. "He saved my life. That night, I thought I was going to die. I couldn't even scream. But he didn't give up on me. He knew exactly what to do." The local newspaper called Shadow a 4-legged angel. People from the neighborhood brought him treats, toys, and even a big banner that said, "Thank you, Shadow." The police officers who followed him that night visited Jack often and brought Shadow a shiny tag shaped like a badge. It read, K9 Hero Shadow. But through all the praise and attention, Shadow didn't seem proud or excited. He just stayed close to Jack. He lay beside his hospital bed for hours, his eyes fixed on Jack's face. Nurses allowed him to stay because they saw the deep bond between them. Whenever Jack had a nightmare, Shadow would nuzzle him awake with a soft whine. Whenever pain made Jack cry, Shadow would lay his head gently on Jack's chest. People saw a dog, but Jack saw something more, a soul, a friend, a lifesaver. He knew that he owed Shadow not just for that night, but for all the quiet moments, for the loyalty, the comfort, the love. Some heroes don't wear capes. Some heroes have fur, paws, and a heart. Jack stayed in the hospital for a few weeks. When he finally returned home, he couldn't walk without crutches. But Shadow was always there, walking slowly beside him, guiding him gently through the house. Jack often sat in the backyard, watching the sun go down, with Shadow lying quietly at his feet. Neighbors visited often, not just to see Jack, but to pet the dog who had become a legend in their town. Children brought drawings of Shadow. Someone even made a short video about the rescue. But through it all, Jack and Shadow stayed humble. They didn't need the attention. They just needed each other. One evening, Jack sat on the porch with Shadow and said, "You know, buddy, I was the one who saved you first, but I think you've repaid that 100 times over." Shadow tilted his head, listening. "I don't know how you knew to go to the police, but you did. You knew I needed you." Shadow rested his head on Jack's knee, and for a moment, Jack felt the world fall quiet, peaceful, and warm. Years passed. Jack's leg healed, and life returned to normal. But he never stopped telling people about Shadow. He spoke at schools, at animal shelters, at police events. His message was always the same. Kindness comes back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, but it always returns. Shadow grew older. His steps became slower, and his eyes a little cloudy. But he never stopped watching over Jack. One quiet night, Jack looked at the stars and whispered, "Whatever I do in this life, I'll never forget that night, and I'll never forget you." Shadow wagged his tail softly. Some love stories are between people, but the greatest love Jack ever knew was with the dog he saved, who saved him right back